Milena and welcome to my series reading 24 classics in 2024. If you've seen my mid-year freakout tag, you know I'm not doing so very well with this challenge. And that is why I thought we could do for the rest of the year a vlog series trying to finish the books that are still on that goal list. I've had some inspiration from other booktubers who have done year-long vlog series. I found it so fun and engaging, and I figured if I am going to do something like that, it would definitely be to try and tackle my 24 classics that I still want to read this year. I'm starting this vlog series at the end of June. Currently I have only completed 4 out of 24. 2 of which were a reread. So I've really played it safe for the first half of the year. But I'm currently reading 3 classics. Just checked the list and one of those classics isn't even on the list. I could go ahead and add it to the list, but that would be cheating. I picked it for my TBR board, so I will discuss it in this vlog, even though it's not technically on the list. The book that I will finish first, I think, is A Passage to India by Forster. I am 264 and I'm enjoying this. This is a really interesting exploration of colonialism in India. We follow both Indian and British characters who try to form a friendship, but in trying to form a connection, it's the way that imperialism works and the way that the British have set it up comes between these characters constantly. I find it quite interesting to read a book from its time about its time. Almost finished this. I'm listening to the audiobook, which I'm liking okay. It's not necessarily a recommendation. This one I think I will finish first. And then I'm also reading Duty Obscure for the Thomas Hardy read-along, also on the list, and I am on page 307. I am over halfway through. I'm actively annotating this one, so it's taking a little bit longer. I am not that impressed by Duty Obscure yet. People told me that it was the most heartbreaking Hardy, and so far I feel way less engaged than I did with Tess of the D'Urbervilles or Far From the Madding Crowd. We follow our main character Jude, who grows up in a family that apparently is not supposed to marry. All the marriages in his family fail, and we follow him as he does get married and kind of history repeating itself. One of the most, I think, interesting things about Judith is that he is a working class man, but he dreams of becoming a scholar. That is, I think, tightly connected to his class and to his concept of marriage and love. I think I'm making it sound more interesting than I'm actually finding it. So far it will definitely not be more than a 4-star, but I still have quite a few pages to go in which a lot of things can still happen. There is one more character called, not Arabella, Sue, who is Jude's cousin, and I find her quite interesting and unconventional. So we'll see what the book is going to do with her story-wise. And then one of the books that's not actually on the list, but that was on my TBR board, is The Women of the Harlem Renaissance, and I've read the introduction so far, and it just gives a bit of a general history on how women were involved in the Harlem Renaissance and how it came to be. I have read a non-fiction book about the Harlem Renaissance, so I have some concept of the people who were a part of it, but this is all about the women, and I feel like that non-fiction book I read was a lot about the men of the Harlem Renaissance. But this is poems and stories, and I'm very excited to read this because I've not read poetry in a very long time. I think I will also be reading Stoner by John Williams in this vlog because that is going to be our Whimsical readers book club pick, and on the 12th of July I have a live show for that one. I also have a live show for this next week, so I do have a lot of motivation to be reading more of these classics. And Stoner's also on the list. By the end of this vlog I will have crossed out at least 3 of the list. Right now it is really lovely weather and I should check the time. I need to leave because I am going to have some tea with my mom, going to hop on my bike in my floaty dress and sit in the shade watching the sun. I'm not someone who sits in the sun. I'm gonna enjoy the nice weather. Today is Tuesday. It's gonna be really hot for the next couple of days. We'll cool down again on Friday. So I've decided to take a few days off from the shop when it's really hot so that my body can have some time and rest to adjust. On Friday I will be back packing some orders and shipping them. Hi, it's a good few days later. I wanted to clean up my room before I started filming, but Bella was laying on my clothes. Thought we could have some company while I talk about books. But let's see, I finished my Jane Austen bookmark. I finished A Passage to India by Forster, and I think I like this. I rated it 4 stars in my spreadsheet. It reminds me a lot of another work I've read by the author, which is A Room with a View, and I don't think that's necessarily my favorite, although it is Forster's most famous work, and I can also kind of see why. It has a very similar feel of A Stranger Comes to Town. And while in A Room with a View it's like an Italian holiday and it's really romanticized what Italy is, this book is definitely more critical and it's more about imperialism and British people being in India. I think from that perspective this story was definitely more interesting. It does also get more political, which I did appreciate as well, but I didn't think the characters were as distinguished as they were in A Room with a View. There's only one character that I really got a feel of, and that was Dr. Aziz. Maybe even liked it more if everything was from his perspective. If we got a first person narrative of Aziz, I would have been able to get along with the characters a little bit more, because right now the characters were very much an ensemble, and I do think that not the plot, not the characters, but like the message of the book was the most important thing, and that's not necessarily, I mean, I find it interesting, but maybe it's not really what I'm looking for with this kind of semi-lyrical modernist writing from an author like Ian Forster. But still, it was good and really surprised me in how it looked at the English, how it looked at Europe and imperialism. I did still give it a 4 star, but I think A Room with a View is better. I listened to the audiobook of this one, so it looks as new, but I love these editions of Ian Forster's works. A book that I read a little bit more of this morning is Duty Obscure. I have around 100 pages left. I am still not feeling it with this book. It's very easy to read. It's definitely, I think, maybe the least challenging Thomas Hardy I've read so far. I found Tess language-wise more difficult, but then I read that 3 years ago, so maybe I'm just more used to Victorian writing, because Tess of the D'Urbervilles was one of the first Victorian classics that I read in English. Maybe it's me, not the book. I think that makes more sense. I do really enjoy how marriage is discussed in this book. In this book we have people who are divorced, and that's so normal now that it doesn't necessarily feel like the big deal it was back then. I understand, oh, these characters are not supposed to do this, they're not supposed to be accepted by society when they do. But right now, I mean, especially in the West, divorce is just a part of society, it's a part of life. It's not something that you would judge a person for. I understand that for a reader who has similar values as the characters in this book, this is very shocking and new. The book would have had, I think, a similar value as The Tenant of Whitewell Hall, which is also kind of about divorce, but more about abuse and divorce. And this is really about just not wanting to be married to the person you're married to. There's nothing really wrong with that person. Your heart just isn't in it and you cannot make it work together. I imagine that's the prime reason why people get divorced now. So what these characters are doing is incredibly normal to me. But of course it wasn't too Victorian. It was unthinkable to get divorced without some sort of abuse or scandal or whatever being involved, but just not wanting to be married to a person. And I think Thomas Hardy does really explore the right of an individual to feel emotions and to act upon them, which I think is what this whole book is about. And I do like the characters of Jude and Sue. I find them quite interesting, but nothing is getting me very emotionally engaged. There are some hints though, so I know that something could happen, but I don't know if I will care. I mean, we've got introduced to a character a little bit later in the book, and I do hope that they will not have a tragic conclusion, because that would be just so devastating and kind of cancel out the whole point this book's trying to make. I don't know what to make of this. I will definitely be active in taking notes, because we have the live show in 5 days. I have not started The Women of the Harlem Renaissance. It's all a little bit close together and I'm really in my audiobook era, but I don't like to listen to audiobooks from classics that I've not read before, like a reread. Perfect. First time around, I've noticed that I miss a little bit too much if I listen to the audiobook. Like short stories is fine, but novels don't seem to work on the first read for me in audiobook format. So I am listening to the audiobook along with how I'm reading, and I turned on the Pomodori thing on my TV, so I guess I will do that more. I have difficulty reading during the day. Somehow my eyes don't want to focus during the day. It's easier during the evening, especially when it's dark outside. It isn't now before I go to sleep. You would think that it's more difficult to read in the evening, but it's the opposite for me. So while I'm doing this, I have just ordered a lot of classics from Wordsworth for the book fair that I'm doing on the 4th of August. So when that comes in, I'll give you a little sneak peek. There's some new titles that are not in the show Bookshop yet, and the few that are now sold out I will restock, but the new titles I will save for after the book fair. I've had to buy so much stuff to make sure that my whole stall is filled, which has been incredibly expensive and scary. I'm just hoping it goes well on the day. But I'll give you a little sneak peek of the new titles and you can let me know what you think.
The most tragic of all of them. So we thought, perfect, that's exactly where we will start.
Yes.
And that's, of course, Judy Obscure by
True.
Thomas Hardy. Look at that. Oh, that's a pretty edition. I like yours.
Yeah, I really like the art on the cover of this one.
Yeah, it's very pretty. Of course, we always start with a spoiler-free section. So if you haven't read the book, that's okay. You can watch the start of the live show. Perfect.
I think it will be around a 4-star, but I'm going to save it for the end of this live show to be sure. One thing that I always love about Thomas Hardy, and that yet again happened in Judy Obscure, is that it's so accessible to read. Like compared to things like Dickens and Gaskell, I find it so easy and enjoyable to read Thomas Hardy. Like he is ambiguous, he has metaphors, but not in a way that you cannot just follow everything that is happening. There are definitely some very maybe hidden themes a little bit here and there, but I find it so accessible and comfortable. Comfortable, I mean not thematically, but on a sentence level, I find it very comfortable to read. This was definitely for me the slowest, especially in the beginning, and I didn't feel as engaged as I did with some other Thomas Hardy works. So I do think that compared to the other ones, this will be ranked lowest. But I've read his major work, so it makes sense. I felt conflicted most of the book, and I definitely really did like the characters. I found them quite interesting, especially Sue. I found, I don't know how I found her later, but I found her setup very interesting, and I found her as a character fascinating.
I'm not sure exactly how I feel so far about this book. I think I appreciate it more than I enjoy it. So I agree it is very accessible to read. Like all of his books I feel like are pretty much like very easy to go through and read and understand what they're trying to do. So that's good. But yeah, it's just a few things that I'm not sure I liked, or even I'm not sure how I feel about them, especially the character. Because I don't have a rating yet, but I'm it will not be a 4-star, I don't think. I think it will be maybe a 3 stars.
The live show for Judy Obscure was yesterday with Mary, and I had a lot of fun doing that live show. So overall, this is not my favorite Thomas Hardy book. I appreciated reading it and I had overall a good time. This one didn't engage me in the same way that Far From in a Crowd and Tess of the D'Urbervilles did. I mean, the overall question, of course, with this book is it as heartbreaking as people say it is? It is a little bit, but I think Tess got me so much stronger because I actually cared about Tess as a person, which I don't think I really did about Jude. This was also definitely the wrong book to start with our read-along. It is such a controversial book also for a modern reader, and for a reader from its time it's a bit of a complicated one. So I hope that the Woodlanders, which we'll read in the summer, is going to be maybe a more fun book, I hope. I haven't really experienced Thomas Hardy and fun in one, but who knows, who knows. And then I did start The Women of the Harlem Renaissance, and this is a bit of a mixed bag. Right now I'm reading a novella. It has short stories and poetry. Some of the writing I find a bit bland, and then some of the writing I think is really, really good. I've given 1 5-star so far, and that is The Foolish and the Wise. That is a short story by Leila Amos Pendleton, and this is about 2 women. One woman works in the house of the other, and they have a discussion about Socrates, right? No, why don't I remember if it's Socrates or Socrates. They have a discussion on Socrates. The woman whose house it is really adopts Socrates in a traditional sense, in a way that he is portrayed in history books, and then the person who works for her, I think she's a housekeeper, she doesn't really know a lot about history, and she reacts in a very logical sense to the stories, and as if Socrates is just a peer instead of this mythical, very wise man. And I just loved it, especially when she pointed certain things out about him that were very human, and it just made a lot of sense, and I thought it was so clever. It's very much about how history is written versus how it was actually experienced by the people at the time. So I thought that was a really, really clever short story. It's a poem and a song, I think it's both, and that is called Uncle Rube and the Race Problem by Clara Ann Thompson. Found just very smart, very well paced, very intelligent. So those are two authors that I did not know yet, that I now know. Both these authors were teachers and activists, and they wrote in their free time. I'm reading a novella right now that I'm not loving as much. It is called The Sleeper Wakes by Jessie Fawcett. It's called a novelette in 3 installments. It's about a woman who grows up with her foster family, and then she meets another woman who really is used to taking advantage of marrying men and divorcing them to get her own security and money. She uses this woman kind of as a model for how to form her own life. The writing is a little bit direct and a little bit bland, even though the characters and the story is really fascinating to me. I am currently on almost on page 50, and this has a little under 200 pages. So I will get back to you once I have finished this collection, and I have about 6 days to finish Stoner for the next live show. I have not been planning this well at all. It has almost been 6 months since I opened Milena's bookshop, and I am celebrating with a giveaway that you can participate in if you would like to. I'm giving away 2 mystery bags. Those are the mystery bags that you can find on my webshop and on Etsy. So I'm giving 2 of them away. Unfortunately, I can only do the giveaway within Europe. So if you live within Europe and you would like to participate in a giveaway, it's super easy. All you have to do is sign up to become an email member, which is free, and the link to the sign up sheet is in the description down below, and I will pick a winner or 2 winners on the 19th of July, which is when the 6-month birthday takes place. These mystery bags have a mystery book, so kind of a blind date with a book concept. The shop also does have a blind date with a book if that's something you're interested in. But the mystery bag has a blind date with a book and 3 surprise bookish items from the shop. So I'm really excited to curate 2 of those mystery bags for 2 of you guys. If you sign up to be an email member, you get a few emails a month, not a lot, just me letting you know if there are any restocks or any new themes within the shop. If you are outside of Europe and you would still like those updates, you can of course also sign up if you just want to know when new restocks are taking place or when new products are being launched. Back to the books, back to reading. I am so pleasantly surprised by Stoner by John Williams. I will be honest, I wasn't super excited when this was picked for the Whimsical Readers Book Club. I really thought it would be a basic white man book, but it's not. In Stoner, we follow the character called Stoner. He grows up on a farm and goes into academics, and he is a very ordinary man. The premise of this book is very much an ordinary life and what happens emotionally to a person who leads a very ordinary life. Because our main character, he gets a job, he is not the best, he is neither the worst, he marries, he gets a child. It's all very normal. But we notice that Stoner is quite unhappy and that he really misses more human connection in his life, which is such a timeless thing to write about. The writing is very accessible, but not plot heavy necessarily. Usually what makes a book accessible for me is if it's plot driven, so it's very stimulating to keep on reading. This book definitely does have a plot, but it's not the main thing. Stoner's emotions and the way that he experiences his life and loneliness is written in a way that it is not too dark or too dragging, and I find that masterful, because how hard is it to write about a subject like that without it feeling like a really tough, dark read, which this doesn't. There is the question of his wife, who is villainized in this book, but I don't know if villainized is the right thing to say, because I do think she's an actual villain. They have an unhappy marriage, they have no emotional connection together. He fell in love with her and for some reason she agreed to marry him. Now this can be because of the time period, maybe she did not have a lot of other options, or she just felt like she had to, because when they are young, it is set during or just after the First World War. When their daughter is born, things really start to change because we are not at the normal anymore, and we see that Stoner is kind of forced in a situation that he doesn't begrudge anyone. He seems to actually enjoy it. He seems to be content with it. And the way that he cares for his daughter is very much how fathers care for their children now, and not of course in this time period usually. And saying that his wife is being villainized is, I think, in a way that she has no emotional connection to him, but also no interest and no real love. But at the same time, I think like this should be a companion novel or dual perspective. There's so much going on with his wife and I don't know what it is. It's definitely some type of trauma or mental illness that we cannot grasp because Stoner cannot grasp it, but her behavior is not logical in any way to us because we don't understand her, and because of that she is kind of the villain of this book because she does make his life, from our perspective, from his perspective, unnecessarily hard and unnecessarily lonely. And I feel for this man because he went into his marriage with the best intention, and then there does happen something early in their marriage that I'm sure we will discuss during the live show. I don't know how it was approached in this time, but it's definitely sexual assault in this book. While I also think that neither of the characters perceived this as such, because I don't think they had the terminology or the understanding of what it meant. Again, with classics, always more challenging to read when the characters cannot identify a thing for what we now know it is, or how we now would identify something. I think this man, Stoner, didn't understand what he was doing. He thought that what he was doing was just a part of early marriage and just part of how things were supposed to be. It is a content warning in this book. I would keep it in mind if you want to read this one. I am now, I think, around halfway through. The live show isn't today, so I really need to crack on with this one. It's still early in the day, so I will do a little bit more reading today, and I have done most of the things I needed to do for the shop today. Shipped the packages I needed to ship. I think I've done everything for the book fair now. I did the last little things that I was procrastinating on because I didn't. Sometimes there's this thing that's just small, but because you haven't done it before and you know you need to not make mistakes, I procrastinate. Also, I wanted to mention on here that it's Jane Austen July, and of course I am reading Jane Austen. I am currently reading Mansfield Park, which is a reread for me, and I think I will discuss Mansfield Park with you in the next classics vlog, because I'm trying to keep these vlogs up. If you love Jane Austen and if you want something special for Jane Austen July, I do have a Jane Austen July goodie bag that's only in the shop this month. I think there are a few left because they're in stock as long as every single product is in stock. I think there are about 3 left. I will leave a link of the Jane Austen July goodie bag in the description down below if you want to get one. But I'll see you in a bit once I have finished Stoner. I'm just sitting down to film a book haul, little preview. I think it will be next week's video, but let's improve the camera angle. I finished Stoner and I don't know what my rating is going to be yet. There's this one detail in the book about disability that I'm not sure about yet. I've not made my mind up, and therefore I'm glad I have a live show. And I'm really curious how Lucy and Mary review that part of the book. Wow, someone is doing something outside. It's either going to be a 4.5 or a 5 star. Like, I did not expect at all. If you've seen me in any video, any live show, talk about my expectations for Stoner, they were very low. I think I mentioned it in this vlog as well, that I did not think I would really enjoy this. Just the way other people can get on your nerves. But I really did. I liked the writing. The writing was my main thing in this book. Yeah, I think I love the writing most. It's very accessible whilst also just beautiful. It's difficult to talk about this book. I thought the writing was absolutely perfect. The way the book was structured worked. We start the book with, I feel like, quite a controversial just first paragraph the main character's entire life. So you know how this book is going to end. And then it says he was born in 1891. And then it ends. I'm not going to read you the last sentence because of course I don't want to ruin the book for you. But it ends with his death. It's just a really beautiful story about a very ordinary man from beginning to end. Oh, there were some parts in the second half of this book that got me so strong emotionally. I talked about Judy Obscure in this vlog as well, yes. And there are so many similarities within those two books, but I would have to say I very much prefer Stoner. It's also a more modern book, so it makes sense that first of all the author had more freedom in writing what he wrote. He had more examples to draw from. I also kind of prefer just the way this story was told. It's very concise. It's not even 300 pages, and yet it spans the life of a person. John Williams, wow, because this book has so many details that I would usually not like at all. This book has a middle-aged white man as the main character. That doesn't usually draw me. I would not have picked this up based on the blurb. It has infidelity, which I have a big ick for that. I cannot get along with that at all. It has academics, which I love academics in real life, not in books. I know it's weird, just the way it is. It has all those small things that I usually just don't like in books. And still, I am convinced to give this a 5-star. And I have no idea how both Mary and Lucy feel about it because they were really excited for this book. I think Mary will really love it. I don't know how Lucy will feel about the writing because the writing isn't very lyrical and she usually prefers that. I will leave the link to that live show in the description down below. I don't get surprised by classics that often. So many people have talked about a book and that really helps me narrow down my expectations, and usually they kind of work the way I thought they would, but not this one. I didn't read much more of the Women of the Harlem Renaissance because I needed to finish this for today. Oh, I did read a little bit more because I'm not halfway through. I will dip in and out of this one, especially with the poetry. It's just not kind of fast reading kind of material. I want to thank you so much for watching this vlog. I'm very excited to keep on going with my 24 in 24. Having said that, let's see how far I am right now. I have read 7 of 24 and I'm currently reading one more. I'm still tragically behind on this challenge because it's now July. Yeah, it's very much going to be a challenge and you can witness whether or not it works out for me. Oh, before I go, I want to show you one of the new mugs. That is, I mean, I got them for the book fair, but if they don't sell out on the book fair, I will put them on the shop. So this is the Virginia Woolf one. There's also an Austen and Dickens one, but look at this beautiful mug. I'm really enjoying it. They are from Bookshop, by the way, which is a wonderful female-owned brand that I have a lot of very nice bookish things from, and I just love working with them because they are so kind and helpful. Okay, I'm going to go now because I need to edit this vlog, prepare for the live show, and I will see you in my next video.